Welcome, welcome. You listen to 360 Info. I'm your host, Hamptonio. What you do for yourself depends on what you think of yourself. And what you think of yourself depends on what you know of yourself. And what you know of yourself depends on what you've been told of yourself. Yes, Cleveland, a little rainy, a little cloudy, but we'll take it because it's better than the snow. We got a nice show for you today. We're going to bring it on son of one of our icons here in Cleveland, Fanon Hill, and he's going to be talking and joining a discussion about rites of passage and the importance of rites of passage and why it's needed and maybe the missing link in our community that's causing all this disconnect. So I'm going to join you for a while. I'm out here working in the community today, so maybe the first half hour I'll stay with you, but you'll be not sorry because Brother Vince Robinson is going to be there taking up the second half of the show and talking with our guests and communicating with him. Brother Vince in the remote studio. How you doing there, sir?
Man, you know, I'm looking outside, and I don't know where you are, but it's bright and sunny over here, and I know...
It is, okay.
Oh, yeah, folks are going to be mistaking that sunshine for spring, but it ain't here yet. Y'all better hold on.
Yet.
We probably got another 5, 6, 7 weeks of winter, y'all.
Well, you know how Cleveland do it. If you get into April and stuff and think you're out of it, they're like, hold on, I got a little something for you to remember me by. Take
indeed,
this, you know.
Indeed. Yes, indeed.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, so we got a good brother. Yeah, we have a good conversation we're going to do, Vince, you know, to kind of break the cycle of this, you know, COVID stuff and to get us on track, too, to keep our eyes and minds glued to what's going on in our community as well, because you deal with the physical health, but we got to deal with the mental and the spiritual health as well during this crisis.
Yes.
You know, so we look like we got our guests on hold. We're going to plug them in. And Vince, while we're doing that, why don't you tell them a little bit about our guests?
Well, I'm going to do that, but real quick, I just want to mention, don't forget you can become a sponsor of 360 Info Network by dialing 216-526-1297. That's 216-526-1297. Talk to Stephen Boyd. Get on board. Become a sponsor. 360 Info Network is pleased to welcome to our airwaves Fanon Hill. He's an arts administrator, a waterfront festival founder, and he's no stranger to community transformation through strategically engaged activism or artivism. He serves as the executive director and co-founder of the Youth Resiliency Institute, a social benefit organization that provides culturally responsive arts-based programming in East Cleveland, Ohio, and Baltimore, Maryland. In addition, he serves as a trainer for the National Rites of Passage Institute, which was founded by his father, Paul Hill, Jr. Welcome to 360 Info Network, Fanon Hill.
Thank you, sir. It's a privilege and truly an honor to be here. I'm familiar with your work and the work of Baba Hampton, excuse me. And so I'm looking forward to diving into discussion.
Okay. And I just got to get this in real quick, Lynn. Fanon and I were supposed to do an interview last week, and my schedule just got all messed up and discombobulated, and I neglected to call him. So I'm going to apologize to him on the air in front of thousands of people right now. Sorry I didn't make that call, but we'll make the call in the future, and we'll make some things happen, okay?
Absolutely, and no need for any apologies. We are all engaged in important work, specifically in this moment, and so we have to move forward and make sure that we just continue to maintain the continuity of our liberatory work. So, not a problem.
All right, thank you, brother.
Yeah, all right, my brother. Well, like you said, but having a dad that is deep seated into this our community and been doing great things for a lot of years, I'm sure it rubbed off on you. You're fortunate to have a father like that, and that I respect dearly in our community, But yet, he's part of this national, this national Rites of Passage program, and I'm always speaking culturally and looking back, as far as what our ancestors have laid down for us and our roots over there at the motherland. And you guys seem to put a program together to kind of simulate and emulate that type of thing. And you went through it yourself. Of course, I'm not only a part of it, I'm part owner of this thing here, as well.
Right.
So talk to us a little bit about that program and how it was beneficial to you in going through it, and why, you know, our youth and our community and the parents of these youth should be looking towards doing something in that nature, and how helpful it can be.
Absolutely. Well, I always like to say that Rites of Passage, specifically African-centered Rites of Passage, teaches our children how to rebel against all that aims to destroy them. Rites of Passage, African-centered Rites of Passage, teaches our children, our youth, how to rebel against all that aims to destroy them. And so I come from a very large family. My mother and father, amazing parents, amazing activists, organizers, institution builders in the city of East Cleveland, throughout greater Cleveland, and nationally as well as internationally. And so I was, as you shared, Baba Hampton, very, very fortunate, and continue to be fortunate to have my mother and father still healthy, still on the front line in terms of doing this important work and understanding the power of the Black family. So you really can't speak about African-centered Rites of Passage without speaking about the Black family. You can't speak about the Black family without speaking about the African family and African family structures. One of the books that was required reading for me as I was going through my Rites of Passage process through the National Rites of Passage Institute was The Strengths of Black Families. And that book was written by an individual by the name of Dr. Robert Hill. No blood relation, but definitely cosmic relations. And within that book, Dr. Hill speaks about, he really indexes those strengths that our people carried from Africa. Enslavement did not, as my father, Paul Hill Jr. often says, enslavement did not disrupt those traditions. Those traditions are still there. It's up to us to do the work to make sure that we are shining a light on those practices and those traditions. And so as a child, going through my Rites of Passage process in the city of, I like to say, historic East Cleveland, Ohio, we hear about everything that's not right about East Cleveland, Ohio, but there is so much that is right about East Cleveland, specifically if you think about the many residents. And so what's very unique about the National Rites of Passage Institute is their focus on, once again, the Black family, but then also the focus on the role of villagers in any given village, understanding their responsibilities. And as such, the National Rites of Passage Institute, as facilitating a timeless tradition of rites of passage that intentionally guides a person's holistic development through life transitions, the National Rites of Passage Institute has always practiced that, right in the backyard. And the backyard, once again, is East Cleveland, Ohio, within the context of this conversation we're having right now. And so coming of age in East Cleveland, the Rites of Passage process I went through connected me with individuals such as Baba Wade Nobles. I never forget being in middle school as a seventh grader and Dr. Wade Nobles presenting to Black families in East Cleveland. I never forget being in a classroom with Max Stanford, Muhammad Ahmad, and him speaking about the Revolutionary Action Movement and the Black Panthers. Now, keep in mind, we're in the seventh grade. And so starting from or revisiting that definition or that response that I shared at the top of the show, Rites of Passage teaches our children how to rebel against all that aims to destroy them. Being able to understand my connection as a seventh grader, right? And understanding my responsibility and hearing from these scholars, hearing from great-grandmothers in the city of East Cleveland who understood their responsibilities and were civically engaged from an African-centered perspective in their immediate community, that is what helped to shape me. So I just wanted to, begin by just sharing about the role of community within the National Rites of Passage Institute. But nonetheless, in Ropey, which is also known as the National Rites of Passage Institute, is actually in its 28th year of existence, okay? And it was co-founded by my father, Paul Hill Jr., and my mother, Mama Marquita. And one of the things that they initially recognized was the importance during the early 80s in terms of the lineage. They understood the role of, once again, the Black family, but also in terms of connecting different processes that had taken place in the past, once again. And one of those processes came out of the West Coast through Simba, which in Kiswahili translates into young lion. And so the genesis of the National Rites of Passage Institute was actually Simba Maleka. And there were opportunities during the 80s for young children to be prepared to journey through a formal rites of passage process. But the first step that was identified was us going through programming and processes through Simba Maleka. Ironically, my wife, who is also from historic East Cleveland, she went through rites of passage process at that time. The village of East Cleveland is truly an African village. We knew each other as young people, but, we never imagined that coming of age, we would actually come together as a unit and be married. But that kind of speaks to, I think, just the cosmic vibration of the National Rites of Passage Institute connected to African-centered traditions and practices, and being able to look in the mirror as a young person and saying, this is who I must be. Okay. This is who my wife must be. I must have a wife who practices these sorts of traditions, so on and so forth, and her likewise. And so I wanted to really, once again, contextualize before going a little deeper into the National Rites of Passage Institute's work locally, nationally, and internationally.
Okay, well, the context is very important, and we're glad that you gave that to us. We're going to get back to Rites of Passage and further discussion about the importance of it and the benefits of it when we come back. You're listening to 360 Info Network on AM 1490 WERE with Hamptonio, Vince Robinson, and our special guest, Fanon Hill. We'll be right back.
Okay, stand by, guys. You're coming back on in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We're back. AM 1490 WERE 360 Info Network. Hamptonio, Vince Robinson, and our very special guest, Mr. Fanon Hill. And we're talking about rites of passage. So we interrupted you midstream. We want you to get back to your thoughts, if you can, about the importance of rites of passage and how it is being implemented in your paradigm and in other parts of the world.
Absolutely.
One thing, too, though, Brother Fanon, I'm sorry for cutting you. One thing, it made me think, when you were saying that, it made me think the exposure that most of us, as far as gotten to rite passes, as a group, has been maybe through roots on roots or something. You know what I mean? And it is funny, that how intertwined and how it was a part of, our community, our life, and everything at one point in time. And if you look at it, you see some resemblance in other cultures with that. With the Jewish community, with the Hispanic community, they still practice some points, some parts of that. I just wanted to throw that in, and just how relevant it is.
Yes, it's extremely relevant, as you were saying, and it also speaks to the importance, as you shared, or we were speaking about during the break, recognizing that we all, at any points within our lives, have to look at ourselves in the mirror as we are going through middle age, as we are growing older and knocking on the door of elderhood. Rites of passage is very powerful in the sense that it allows us to recognize that as we are going through those passages, we sometimes need, as my father and mother shared, guardrails, the guardrails that allow us a bit of support. So we are ushering into those new passages in such a way where we are very, very, very well connected and supported. And one of the things that the National Rites of Passage Institute has done over the years has really provided those opportunities once again for individuals, not just young people, not just youth, but for older adults who are knocking on the door of elderhood to really foster the creativity needed to meet, challenges that they may be facing in their lives. And so Rites of Passage has been reclaimed by the National Rites of Passage Institute truly as a socialization process for healing and cultivating wholeness as well as community. And equally important, I do want to share, it's no coincidence that the National Rites of Passage Institute incorporates the 7 values of Kwanzaa as part of its Rites of Passage process. The African, in the truest sense, philosophical undergirding that we find within Kwanzaa definitely provides opportunities for us to be part of a collective and not as living as isolated, unattached individuals. So I just want to share a quick story. I want to say in 2011, I found it absolutely critical to travel from Baltimore City, where I have an organization with my wife, and I knew that I needed to be back in Cleveland because there was a very important ritual taking place. And that ritual was organized by a collective, and one of those individuals who was part of that collective was Baba Lynn Hampton. And I want to say that gathering, that ritual, actually was celebrating who we are and who we must be as a people in the city of Cleveland. And it was connecting Black history during the month of June in such a way where it was understood that there's movement, there's activism that has to take place, and we must be reminded of our responsibility. So me going through my Rites of Passage process, regardless of being an individual who has gone through that process who's currently living in Baltimore, we have individuals who have gone through the National Rites of Passage Institute who are doing amazing work in Canada. There's a point where we have to always understand where home is. And so the National Rites of Passage Institute, my Rites of Passage experience, has always kept me connected to home. And so, Kwanzaa reflecting values that the National Rites of Passage Institute practices day in, day out, continues to be very, very, very important.
Wow, that's all right, man. It's very much well needed there, and I'm hoping that we really work together and really incorporate that in some of the other things that we're doing here in Cleveland as well. How critical, we talked about how critical it is, but I just want to dive just a little deeper on one of my last comments in reference to this. It gave you direction. It gave you a sense of who you are and what your past, and made that connection for you. And it seems like a lot of our kids is not getting that. And to me, I'm a strong believer if you feel better about yourself, you do better about yourself. And, you guys made that connection with the school as well. And, and I think that's very important. And then, what's the problem that we have here with Cleveland is that, our school board is not controlled by the citizens. Yes. You got the government, the administration dealing with it. So it's not made up of people from the community that may have a say-so on how the curriculum goes or what you need to incorporate or things like that. And in closing, something Baba David Coleman has said that, hey, we may not have the institutions to do the reading, writing, and arithmetic, but we can open up entities on Saturday, Sunday school that kind of delves down, deep into our culture and shaping that particular personality of these young folks. So I just want you to elaborate a little bit on that.
Yes. So, following retirement, my father contracted with the East Cleveland City School District to provide, at the time, what was known as the Journey Rites of Passage program for selected 7th and 8th graders at Heritage Middle School. And the program was actually provided during the school day for 2 periods per week for male and female students in separate classes. The Journey project was actually provided or actually offered this process for over 6 years until the state of Ohio, through House Bill 70, took over the East Cleveland School District and replaced the superintendent and elected board with the state of Ohio selected CEO. Although, assessment, because the National Rites of Passage Institute, all of its programming is evaluated. And assessment of the Journey Project by Dr. Deborah Wasserman of Ohio State University and others over the 6-year project period showed overall improvement in attendance, social behaviors, grades, increased participation in the education process, as you were talking about, not just Monday and Friday, but on Saturdays, on Sundays. And after the state of Ohio takeover, the National Rites of Passage Institute's contract without explanation was not renewed. So that, in terms of what you were speaking about, Baba Hampton, in terms of recognizing the needs of these processes and some of, the barriers that we face as we live and practice our African traditions in this time, really speaks to the importance of us collectively being aware of what's happening in various communities, whether we're talking about East Cleveland, really looking at some of these international structures that are set up that work against the young people. And as I started, Rites of Passage teaches our children how to rebel against all that aims to destroy them. So young people understanding how these processes at a local level, through school boards that have not been elected, provides them with those entry points to challenge those structures. And that's also an important aspect of the National Rites of Passage Institute's work, not just advocacy, but organizing and challenging some of these structures, not in isolation as well, but also, collectively by sharing what's happening in various places throughout the world.
Brother Fanon, I'd like to jump in and just ask you, for the benefit of the listeners, could you describe Rites of Passage programs, how they are implemented, what are some of the things that are done within the program itself, and what the participants are going through?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm definitely going to make sure that I share some very pertinent websites that has quite a bit of documentation for those who are interested in jumping in deep, for those who are interested in just, taking it step by step. The National Rites of Passage Institute has been engaged, as I shared, in this work for decades. So there's some great information per Rites of Passage in the various ecosystems it takes place in, whether we're talking about Rites of Passage processes, for our family members who are incarcerated, whether we're talking about faith-based Rites of Passage, whether we're talking about school-based Rites of Passage, community-based Rites of Passage. But to answer your question, Rites of Passage is a process of life cycles with points that include birth, naming, childhood, adolescence, adulthood, marriage, midlife, eldership, and transition into the venerated ranks of ancestors, okay? And so it's also important to understand that as we are grappling with the twin pandemics of COVID-19, as well as racial injustice, it really demonstrates, this period, in my estimation, really demonstrates the importance of Rites of Passage processes. And so one of the things that the National Rites of Passage Institute was able to do in 2010, the National Rites of Passage Institute held its first conference on Rites of Passage as a strategy for child, youth, and community development. And subsequently, in 2013, 2016, and 18, the National Rites of Passage Institute also held international and national conferences in Baltimore, as well as Toronto, Canada, and in London, England, actually, at King's College. And so the 21st century mission of the National Rites of Passage is truly threefold in the sense that it functions, number one, as a clearinghouse, as a resource for African-centered rites of passage and culture, as well as a clearinghouse that supports networks of institutions and organizations, as well as individuals in harvesting new generations through the National Rites of Passage Institute and in partnership with other entities that are providing Rites of Passage processes. So I share that to definitely highlight an important outcome that really elaborates on the specific question that you asked, Barbara Robinson. And one of the outcomes of the National Rites of Passage Institute is the Black Child Journal. And it's published biannually by, in collaboration, with the National Rites of Passage Institute. And it was created, believe it or not, in 1979 as a means to advocate for Black children and their families. So the Black Child Journal has been releasing special editions of the Black Child Journal that have focused on various aspects of your question. For instance, rites of passage within school settings, the role of rites of passage, the role of art, within rites of passage processes, the role of culturally relevant scholarship per higher education. And so if you go to the National Rites of Passage Institute's website, and I have to share this because, the scholarship within the Black Child Journal really is quite powerful. But nonetheless, if you go to blackchildjournal.com, what you'll be able to see is all of the editions and be able to connect with any specific aspect of rites of passage in the contextual settings that it has taken place in and continues to take place in for the benefits of learning and moving forward within rites of passage scholarship.
Okay. The reason I asked the question is I just want people to get an understanding or an idea of what the participants are actually going through. You mentioned the naming, you mentioned, the birth, marriage, and getting information about those things. I haven't participated in one per se. I've witnessed it as we spoke during the break and seeing people go through going to Africa, receiving their name, getting information about ancestral things and just getting a benefit from that. So I just want folks to understand that it's not hocus pocus, it's not witchcraft or anything like that. You understand what I'm saying?
You know what, though? Right. In my last question, just statement that I want to make before I have to let you guys go and then go back to work. But we need not to be elders and afraid to attend a ceremony if ever offered to do it at our old age. It still is something necessary. There's nothing to be embarrassed about because we've been taken and stripped away from our character, our culture, and our heritage and things like that. So it's when Bible speak of being born again, you have rituals like in the Yoruba. You could be 70 years old, but they when you become an initiate again, guess what? You're a baby all over again learning. So that's how it works. So we shouldn't be embarrassed about it. Hey, we need to reconnect because I got to refer right back into Brother Wayne Chandler's book again, Ancient Future. We're going to have to go back and pick up what we left at Sankofa, and it's going to catapult us into the proper standing that we need to make. We have to make that connection with the continent, and I think that's what's going to be necessary to get the respect that we need as a people and as a community. And with that, I'm going to have to let you guys go. It's a pleasure, brother, and we're going to be speaking in the future and definitely get with Brother Paul Hill as well. We got some slots ready for him sometime later on in the year as well.
Fantastic, and thank you, Baba Hampton, for all your work over these decades and the work you continue to do.
Thank you, Dad. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, Brother Vince. Right. I'll get back with you. Okay, then.
So one of the things I wanted to, yes, I absolutely understand, your question. And one of the reasons why I wanted to share about the Black Child Journal is because what you have within the Black Child Journal is really a scholarship that just speaks to the various aspects and elements of rites of passage in terms of various individuals and organizations who have been practicing rites of passage over the decades and the various aspects of their rites of passage, programming or processes. And so, for instance, if you look at the spring 2020 Journal of the Black Child Journal, special edition of the Black Child Journal, you would see articles and scholarship that focuses on the socialization of the Black child since 1619. So, for instance, you have an article by Dr. Asa Hilliard that focused on conceptual confusion and the persistence of group oppression through education. You have an amazing article that was published by Dr. Tiba Kopic that focuses on selected resources for African practitioners of African centered rites of passage processes. And so it's important to be able to provide scholarship for those who may be interested in rites of passage in such a way where they're also connected to present practitioners, whether we're talking about practitioners, once again, in East Cleveland, Canada, Toronto. Rites of passage is global. And the implications, as we were discussing earlier, are just absolutely profound. How you enter into the process, a lot of that really depends and is dependent upon what it is, where you are within your life development stage, and what it is that you're attempting to address, whether it's within yourself or collectively, whether you're an educator, whether you're a practitioner of African spirituality and systems, whether you're a professor at a university, whether you're a young person who needs something to hold on to as you're going through a process or coming of age, rather. So that scholarship is extremely important.
Yes. And, the whole idea of being defined by something that is directly connected to your culture can be a source of empowerment. You can't really overstate the importance of having that cultural connection. I'm remembering a conversation that I had with my brother, Mwatabu Okanta, and he was describing an attempt to water down the Rites of Passage program that they had at Kent State University. They wanted to make it multi-ethnic, multicultural, this and that. And when they tried to do that, it was a failed experiment. It was that whole diversity and inclusion equity stamp that they're trying to put everything through. And what it did was it just diluted the efficacy of a connection to an African culture. From where you're sitting and, us navigating this quote unquote new normal and things being virtual, I'm just wondering if that has impacted your efforts at all in Baltimore and in East Cleveland.
Not at all. And once again, we just have to be very clear in terms of who we are, who we must be, and who we are connected to. And so in terms of my experience, going through the Rites of Passage process experience I went through specifically in East Cleveland, Ohio, the processes in terms of understanding who was who, in terms of who was in my community, defining my own community and recognizing those strengths as a young person that I needed to see within individuals in my community, and having those conversations about those strengths. I think for me, Rites of Passage was just profound in the sense that it provided that compass and that map in terms of that index of what an African personality must look like, must be in any given time. And so, some of those individuals I spoke about, I spoke about them for a very, very specific reason, and that was to share that although those individuals, Dr. Wade Nobles or Dr. Muhammad Ahmad, have traveled, the nation, the world, they understand the rootedness in terms of where they need to be, where they have needed to be at any given moment for the benefit of our community, and even more so for the benefit of children, youth, and family, for the benefit of Black children, youth, and family. And so coming of age, once again, in an ecosystem where I understood that I was part of a tradition was extremely, extremely powerful as the colors of the day change, as you were sharing in terms of some of the conversations that you've had with Baba Akanta, Matabu Akanta, whether we're speaking about diversity, equity, whatever the color of the day is per the language that these institutional structures quite often utilize and try to suffocate us with. When you have a foundation and understand who you are, and you understand the power of purpose and the power of working collectively, then that definitely provides that roadmap. Now, presently in the city of East Cleveland, the National Rites of Passage Institute has been working with, in partnership with the Youth Resiliency Institute, a group of young people who are journalism students at Shaw Academy. And these young people are being connected to the power of investigative journalism through rites of passage tactics. And so regardless of what context you want to speak about per rites of passage, the bottom line is young people have to be engaged, and engaging young people in a way where they understand what's happening in their community at any given moment, in the world at any given moment, is truly a powerful aspect of rites of passage.
Okay. We got just a couple minutes before we go to the break, but I just wanted to ask you about your perspective on why there's such a resistance to the implementation of rites of passage programs in public schools across the country.
Well, once again, in terms of understanding that rites of passage teaches our children how to rebel against all that aims to destroy them, having people of any age look at institutional structures, challenging institutional structures for the sake of their own families, for the sake of their communities, is definitely not looked upon as favorable. And so to be able to stand with your culture in tow and to know who you are, where you've been, where you must be, is very, very powerful. And so this is not new. This throughout history, this is a dynamic that we as a people have had to face. But understanding once again our responsibility, regardless of who is in charge at any given time within any institutional structure, those systems remain. The dragon's always going to come back, but it's about who we are in terms of standing in our culture and clothed in our right minds to challenge those systems. That's who we must be. That's who we've been. That's who we're going to be.
Okay. All right. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about a film that you are involved in that shines a spotlight on Cleveland and its elder musicians. We're going to have an exciting conversation about that when we return. You're listening to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE. Vince Robinson with Fanon Hill. We'll be right back after these messages. We're back. AM 1490 WERE 360 Info Network with Vince Robinson and Fanon Hill. And we've been talking about rites of passage extensively, but we want to shift gears a little bit and talk about a film project that you're involved in called Soul of Cleveland. Tell us about this project, its genesis, and what we can expect to glean from it.
Right. Well, the name of the documentary is actually Soul City Cleveland. And as I shared, during our conversation per rites of passage, for me, rites of passage has always provided self-development and cultural awareness. It's always fostered a sense of belonging and provided me with an epicenter where I was part of a community, not, standing alone, not lacking support, sanction, nor purpose, but I was part of a very profound community. And within that community, the role of artists, the role of arts and culture was truly, truly central to helping me develop. I'll never forget being in East Cleveland at the time in Kirk Middle School as a middle school student and loving whenever Bilal Freeman, an amazing individual, an amazing artist within his own right, being in Kirk Middle School and seeing his trumpet bag and having conversations with him about the history of our music in the city of Cleveland and the importance of our music in the city of Cleveland. And so Soul City Cleveland is actually an independent film that truly expresses a unique personal perspective. It shines a light on an era in Cleveland where Black artists, radio stations, and club owners evolved a local music industry that has been acknowledged by music lovers around the world. You can't speak about Cleveland, Ohio, without speaking about an Eddie Backus Sr. You can't speak about Cleveland without speaking about Vail and Don Scott. You can't speak about Cleveland without speaking about a Shirley Cook or Eugene Ross or Lou Ragland. And so Soul City Cleveland tells part of the story, not the entire story of Black music in Cleveland. I mean, everyone has a responsibility to share their stories. But nonetheless, the documentary really focuses on individuals. All of them are elder artists, ages 70 and up, and it is a love letter in many ways to black music in Cleveland and the unheralded elder black musicians and figures in Cleveland who most embody its spirit of self-determination. It's not necessarily about those widely known names in the city of Cleveland per black music, but it's about those names that may have been forgotten, or those names that for the longest time no one was even aware of. The film has taken over 5 years to make. I was able to travel not only around the United States, but able to interview lovers of black music in Cleveland who are from the UK, who are producers in Japan, who have a reverence for Cleveland's black music scene. And so, for instance, one of the artists who's featured in the film is Crazy Marvin Braxton. He's an amazing blues artist within his own right, born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. And, you know, through his life, there's so much that we have learned, and I'm excited to share about the history, the triumphs, for instance, the struggles, the aspirations, his aspirations as an artist in Cleveland, Ohio. So the film is going to be released fall 2021. Although the COVID-19 pandemic slowed the process down a bit, once again, in terms of talking about the power of rites of passage, we move forward. We do not allow anything to impede us within our responsibility. Yes. Now, during the break I was sharing with you, this period, this COVID-19 pandemic, we have lost so many of our elders. During filming, we lost the great Lou Ragland. Who was truly a journeyman soul singer. He was instrumentalist, a songwriter, producer, and label head, who had been making music since the 1960s. And so, to be able to have captured him and to be able to share the wisdom that he has, not only for, Clevelanders, but for lovers of our music throughout the world, really speaks to, in my estimation, the importance of this documentary in terms of providing those points for our children who are coming of age in the city of Cleveland to understand that they're part of a repository, they're part of a lineage, they're part of a history that they must understand as being their own for their ability, in order for them to really forward through their developmental processes in terms of coming of age in the city of Cleveland. Now, when I speak about that, I speak about, even in terms of some of the career pathways that some of our children do not even know about, in terms of them not being aware of, pathways through the arts. You have individuals who are musicians, who are singers, but you have a whole industry that it's important that we connect our children to, whether individuals are interested in being music publicists, booking agents, music arrangers, photographers, website designers, providing opportunities through Soul City Cleveland for young people to be able to learn about individuals who have been on the front line of arts and entertainment within the city of Cleveland for decades, is truly, truly powerful, and I'm excited about being able to share this film.
Well, when I was listening to your response, I was just thinking about the importance of the oral tradition, or the oral tradition, if you will. And one of the ways that we passed down history was through speaking it. So when you give those elders that you spoke of a platform to tell their stories, it is the perpetuation of the oral tradition. I had the good fortune and opportunity to interview Shirley Cook, and she's one of those folks that would be someone appropriate for your documentary. And when she started talking about her relationship with Eddie Backus Sr. and her relationship with Abby Lincoln and all the doors that were opened for her, it was just fascinating to hear that. And it just gives you a certain sense of hope to see the connectedness between all of these folks. And, some of the names you mentioned may not be national or international in terms of their exposure or, how people knowing about them, but they were no less significant, just because they were known by Clevelanders and perhaps not someone in Muskogee, Wisconsin, or something like that. You mentioned quite a few folks, and I'm also recalling that there are other documenters. We talked about Dennis Cash's project. We also did not talk about Reverend Dr. Leah Lewis, who has a film that's out now relative to Leo's Casino and the rich history that's associated with that institution. I'm just wondering your thoughts about how Cleveland is getting so much attention now in terms of its rich musical legacy.
Well, it depends on who you ask that question to, who you pose that question to, I would say. I mean, if we have a conversation about clubs, some of our historic clubs in the city of Cleveland, most of the times when I have conversations with individuals, whether they're in Cleveland or throughout, they're individuals that are mentioned, clubs that are mentioned, and then there are quite a few that are not. So, for instance, within Soul City, Cleveland, being able to interview Miss Ville Scott, Miss Ville Scott and her husband Don Scott. I mean, when you speak about Black entrepreneurialism, they are the epicenter, in my estimation, of Black arts and culture per being entrepreneurs. So, thinking about that in the year 1963, they opened up the Red Carpet Lounge on Euclid Avenue. And the number of opportunities that they provided as Black club owners to Black artists in Cleveland, in terms of being able to piece together the narrative in such a way where, I'm interviewing, for instance, once again, a crazy Marvin Braxton, and discover that he won his first talent show ever performing at the Red Carpet the Red Carpet Lounge that was owned by Ville Scott and her husband Don Scott. The fact that the great jazz vocalist Nancy Wilson, she was a barmaid at that club. There are just so many stories that still need to be told, which is why I shared that, Soul City, Cleveland, it tells part of the story. It does not tell the entire story of Black music in Cleveland. And an aspect of this project is actually we are working with a small cohort of youth who are learning media production, and they're learning about how to tell their own stories about their communities, how to tell stories about Cleveland's historic arts and cultural tradition. It's about being able to, as you were sharing, perpetuate the knowledge, the history, and the rites. Because as we were speaking about rites of passage, you want to speak about ceremony, ritual, tradition, and rites. Oh, my goodness. Those who were fortunate enough to be able to bear witness to Cecil Rucker, as well as Eddie Backus and so many others, Shirley Cook, who engage community and ritual at the Wolf's Den, every Friday for decades. That really speaks to just the power of our music and the importance at this moment in making sure that we are celebrating and perpetuating the artistic legacy of these greats who still live amongst us. Lastly, I just want to share, it's quite interesting. I had a conversation. My wife is a musician, amazing vocalist, Navasha Daya, and she was working on her most recent release, which is a cover of Gil Scott-Heron's Liberation song. And the great Gary Bartz, jazz saxophonist Gary Bartz, is featured on that song. But to be in that studio with Mr. Bartz and to have a conversation about the city of Cleveland and Black music in Cleveland, and for him to mention so many artists whose names I either had never heard of or whose names are not shared enough, it brought tears to my eyes in terms of seeing this amazing artist who played with Miles and Mingus just smile as he recalled his experiences working with Black artists in the city of Cleveland. So we have
that's a beautiful memory. Fortunately, we're out of time. They're going to turn us off when the clock strikes 12. But I just want to thank you for sharing so much with us today, and we will look forward to seeing Soul City, Cleveland, and learning more about Rites of Passage. So thanks for joining us on 360 Info Network. I do have your phone number, and I will reach out to you, and we will make that extra show happen. Thanks for joining us, brother.
Thank you. Peace.
All right, peace. And thanks for joining us here on 360 Info Network. Thanks to our engineer, Tristan Sanchez. Don't forget, you can give Stephen E. Boyd a call at 216-526-1297 and become a part of the 360 Info Network team. Don't forget about our Facebook page. And lastly, know yourself, love yourself. Be yourself. Make today a great day, Cleveland. Peace.